Okay, people, good morning. This is the room. I'm not sure if you can see the true size of this thing, which costs 20 euros per night. Today we are flying with a very small airplane to go to Banda Neira. Banda Neira is sort of the capital of the Banda Islands, the true source of the spice empire of the VOC. So, the plane will leave after the final?
Yeah.
Very good. Look at the thing, man. This is the second time after the Galapagos we get on a flipping Cessna. Lovely.
Take the right.
Oh, this we enter?
We enter and then you take the right seat so you can see Rune.
Why aren't you entering?
Guess first, we are homebound.
Thank you. Wow. There's not much space. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Makasih.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So we have landed at Banda Neira, the capital of the Banda Islands, and this group of islands was the only place on the planet that the nutmeg tree would grow back in the beginning of the 1600s. Welcome to Banda Neira. This is so exciting. The history of our world, actually, and our financial system is this place here. This is the place to begin our explorations, isn't it?
Español.
No español.
Español. Argentina.
Yunani.
Yunani.
Yunani not good? No good. Español. Everybody is very gassed with the World Cup final. Argentina, no. Let's not. Yunani the best.
Yeah, Messi. Messi.
Yamal better.
Yeah.
Yamal, yes. Are these the nutmegs, man? So to my shame, I am not entirely sure how this nutmeg looks like. I just know the history of it, you know. Is this the nutmeg? What? Keep eating. Why are you looking at me like that? Alright, so let me give you some context. So I arrived today with the small Cessna from Ambon, a flight for which I was extremely lucky to find a place. I mean, only 9 people fit in those planes, and usually the bookings are finished a month earlier, in a matter of hours. Every once in a while, people cancel. So when someone cancels, then people like me have the chance to take their place. And this is exactly how I did. I contacted a dive center from here and told them, look, I want to come, tell me how it works with the plane. Now, my second option would have been to come with a big boat. However, that doesn't fit, unfortunately, the other flight that I need to take to leave Indonesia for another destination of the bucket list. Anyway, so here we are, Banda Neira. It is such a beautiful place, and at the same time with such a heavy history that it blows your mind. As the plane was approaching, I could see Rune Island. It wasn't very sharp because of the windows and the clouds and all, but I could see it. And I tell you what, man, I mean, after knowing everything that has happened, you feel in a certain way when you get to see that island. For the Banda area, this is not a tourist season. I mean, it was supposed to be having a heavy monsoon, but it's not. It has this. So we are lucky. I'm not entirely sure how lucky our climate is, but... So look at this, all these fish left to dry. Hello, sir. Fresh? Yes? Unfortunately, our limited, very limited, 2 words limited knowledge of Bahasa Indonesia will be an obstacle here, but we'll do our best. But I mean, look at this place, right? These are the islands that Jan Pieterszoon Coen came and massacred 90% of the population. It's so difficult to just look at them and stomach that information. Because the current population of the Bandas, you realize they are the descendants, not all of them, most of them are the descendants of the people the Dutch brought here, and not the original tribes that used to live here. There are descendants also from the original tribes, but they are the minority. So this would be Fort Nassau. These are the walls, the remaining walls of the thing. This fort, Fort Nassau, was actually the very first fort built by the VOC here on the island of Banda Neira. And it was built to safeguard the very lucrative nutmeg trade of the VOC. However, because of this position of it, very low and very close to the water, it was abandoned for another fort that was built decades later, Fort Belgica, which is also here nearby. This is flipping hell. This is Chinese. This is a temple. Am I actually reading correct, man? What's going on? University of Banda Neira. Hi. This university? Yes. And what do you study here? Look.
Apa yang kamu pelajari? Yes.
But what? What discipline?
Sekarang lagi menunggu dosen, mau bimbingan.
Waiting for the lecture or guidance. Okay. But what is your theme? Analisis gaya bahasa puisi bebas dalam pembelajaran bahasa Indonesia. Analysis of the language style of free poetry. Wow, free poetry. Very good. Thank you. These girls are studying flipping poetry. That was so cool, man. So interesting that such a small place has a university. The rector's office. Absolutely impressive. Well done, people. Look at this, Muhammad Hatta. He was actually exiled here. I will try and find the place where he was exiled. So the lady that actually dropped me here from the airport is the owner of this hotel. Look at this hotel, man. This is absolutely gorgeous. You have cannons. Absolute spectacle. I can envision a lifetime sitting here on this chair, looking at that. This moment here pays for all the hassle. Why didn't you say that it was so gorgeous? How old is this building?
I can make it dramatic and lie and says from the 1800s, but no, it's from the 1980s.
No. If you want to make it dramatic, you say 1600, right after that Pratt Koen left.
Yeah, we made it.
It fits the story perfectly. Very good, very nice.
But this was before our ancestors' land.
So while we were waiting at the airport for the check-in, I actually asked this lady how many descendants of the original Bandanese before Koen are now still living on the islands. And she told me, look, what we are being taught at school is that only one tribe survived. But this is not 100% accurate. You have descendants from many odd tribes, but they are dispersed on the island. All right, so as we make our way to the other side of the island, let's have a chat about these flipping ships of the VOC, because for their time, they were kind of state of the art. Over there is a replica of one of the VOC ships. This boat is essentially designed to carry goods. So unlike what the Portuguese or the Spanish did, that were building ships in order to carry predominantly weapons, the Dutch designed this ship in order for it to carry goods and added a couple of cannons to it, which, as we will see, there were more than a couple. But design-wise, it's already a win, you know, for the Dutch. Now, Batavia, besides the name of the Dutch East Indies capital at the time, it was also the name given to a ship, one of those return ships, if that's the good translation in English. Now, that ship got kind of lost at sea and it ended up bumping on a reef. There is a book written about the Batavia called Batavia's Graveyard, and I suggest to each and every one of you who is remotely interested in the subject or not to read that. The things that happened after the sinking, essentially, of Batavia between the humans who were on board that ship kind of make you want to reflect a little bit on life, on what we are capable of. So yeah, go find it, Batavia's Graveyard. So just to make it clear, the prospect of life from Amsterdam or the Netherlands in general to these islands here was kind of 50-50. I mean, you would embark on that ship and you were kind of gambling with your life. And it's kind of weird because from what I understand from the research on the VOC, the ones who were really making the good money were the ones holding the shares and trading with them. It's an interesting concept to think about all the reasons that the crew of these ships had in order to sail. If we are honest, most of the crew, most of the proper sailors and the soldiers that were also on those ships were the scum of the earth. If you really come to think about, these were the rags that the VOC was fishing from the streets of Amsterdam and Middelburg and you name it. And although things like mutinies, things like the occasional fight and murder on the ship did happen, it wasn't as common. And this is kind of weird. Now, most of these people did end up on the ships of the VOC hoping to make their best fortune, but the truth is that it wasn't really them who were making the fortunes. So if those people weren't really making loads of money, what was the point of risking their lives? They didn't have anything else. But the Netherlands back then, the United Provinces, back then they had immigrants from what we now call Germany, people who were extremely poor, and they were trying to somehow make their luck. And of course, a lot of criminals. If you were one of these people in between the rights and wrongs of society, chances were that you were VOC material. Now, despite the qualities of these people, I understand that any kind of crime on the ship, not only bad crimes like murder and stuff, right? But also common fights were punished in an extremely harsh manner. Just to give you an example, the VOC hierarchy had various tortures depending on what you did. For example, one of the tortures was to tie your feet, tie your hands, and put on your body a special made suit that would withstand the friction. With that rope that you were tied, they would essentially pass your body under the ship multiple times. Like, I don't know, man. Whoever conceived this kind of punishment, I don't know what to say about their character. Now, on top of all that, all the lower class of sailors and soldiers, and I don't even know who else, they were essentially sleeping at the same lower levels of the ship. It's mesmerizing how small they are. So this is a replica of a ship that, to be fair, did not go far. It sank outside the coast of England. Well, pretend you didn't see that. Imagine spending months after months on something like this, through storm and rough seas and scurvy. You would essentially have hammocks placed one next to the other. No privacy, no nothing. If you were a member of the crew of a little bit higher importance, then your cabins of the times would get more and more spacious. For example, if you were an upper merchant of the VOC, or I don't know, the skipper, you would definitely get a better accommodation for the night. So I think we discussed a little bit about it in Amsterdam. There were many reasons why you would die. Sinking the ship was the least of them. The most important one was scurvy, despite the fact that the rations and the food quality, in sense of value, like high in protein, etc., that was good. The problem was that you could not preserve it. I mean, after a little while, these people would end up eating sort of rotten meat. Despite being surrounded by sea, it wasn't that you could rely on catching fish for this enormous quantity of sailors and soldiers. As for the water, now maybe in the beginning when the trip starts, that water is in somewhat good condition, but after the first week or two, I mean, you realize that living things started moving around in that drinking water. One thing that I remember from that book, Batavia's Graveyard, was the description of the ship doctor. Now, back in those days, the medical professionals consisted of 3 different categories. The first one was the physician. The physician was, top of the food chain. Equally as important was the apothecary, the pharmacist of our days. Now, the third in the medical hierarchy, and apparently of less importance, was the Guild of the Surgeons. Now, the surgeons that were working on the VOC ships were considered to be, let's call it, less experienced maybe, or not as capable maybe, or all of the above. Also, the surgeons in the VOC ships were responsible for the shaving of the crew. Besides their surgeon kit, they also had a barber's kit. I remember how impressed I was by this notion of the surgeon/barber of the VOC ships. And picture this in your head, right? This guy was responsible for the taking care of sometimes 300, 400 people. And all that in conditions of, serious illnesses. It's difficult to grasp. Now, of equal importance was the cook. I'm not sure if it was 1 cook or more. I know that the surgeon was 1, max 2. I have no idea about the cooks. All right, check it out. So this minuscule kitchen, I mean, imagine this. This is the space where the cook must prepare meals for 340 people. I mean, picture this. Just picture this. And all this in conditions that a lot of times are, not very good. I mean, you have storms, you have everything. Check out this space, man. A mutineer. A second mutineer. Another impressive story that has to do with the food was the use of salt and the presence of seawater in general. Salt being used in order to, as long as possible, preserve the food, it also made it extremely salty, which, as we all know, creates thirst. So imagine this situation of a huge crew trying to preserve drinking water in whatever condition that might be. Even with maggots in it, you still need it, And at the same time, serving 3 times per day extremely salty food to the crew. It kind of contradicts itself, but apparently there was no other option. Look at that guy. He's got horns. Now, an interesting feature has to do with the routes these ships were taking. So initially, as you can probably deduce from everything we have talked today and in the last episodes, they were copying the routes of the Portuguese. Hello. And in a very similar manner, the Brits were copying the routes of the Dutch. I think it was a Dutch captain that at some point decided to take a different route in order to avoid the currents that were sort of delaying the route of the ships after they would have passed the Cape of Good Hope. So that Dutch captain decided to not follow the traditional route, but continue going a little bit southwards and sort of parallel to the South Pole, and consequently turning a sharp left the moment he would estimate, okay, that this was the proper longitude for Java. By doing so, they managed to gain some pretty serious time, I tell you. Hello. I think this particular captain and his ship made the whole trip in less than 5 months or something, 6 months, something like that. It was quite impressive for the time. Now, another ridiculous problem was Australia. And not only Australia as a landmass, but Australia also as the immense quantity of hidden reefs, very shallow. Hello, sir. Under the sea surface. That was a massive issue for so many ships. I mean, the story of the Batavia is this. They bumped on a reef, and it would happen so often that a ship would miss the proper trajectory, because you realize, I mean, the means of navigation at the time were sort of amateurish, to say the least. So it would be so often that a ship would lose its proper trajectory and bump on something. The worst case scenario would have been to bump on something and stay stuck, you know? Often a ship would bump on a reef in low tide, and then the high tide would come and it would help it escape. That was the good case scenario. I mean, imagine the curiosity of the local Bandanese when they viewed the first, I think it was Portuguese or something, or Spanish, probably Portuguese, the first Portuguese ship appearing from down there. And then their regrets when Jan Pieterszoon Coen's ships arrived. Hey people, so I went to buy a little bit of street food to give it a taste. Street food from Banda Neira. Let's hope that we will not regret this. So pay attention to these beauties here. Just look at this, man. These are the funniest little bananas. But this is not the street food for tonight. It is tempeh. So we have tempeh. We have a weird veggie type of thingy. Smells good. And we have satay. All right. Look at this. Let's start with the satay because it's probably the one that most people know about. Little skewer. Huge difference with the satay that we have in Europe. It's not sweet. So big up. Let's check the tempeh. Could be better. This is excellent, man. This is pure veggies. Wonderful. So, good night for now. See you tomorrow.